Hey girlfriend, this is Jan James. Welcome to the Hope After Breast Cancer podcast, where women who have endured breast cancer learn to have fulfillment over frustration, clarity over confusion, and faith over fear. We tackle the issues that many of our sisters face after a breast cancer diagnosis, from brain fog to fear of recurrence, from menopause to sex after breast cancer. This is the place to learn how to have hope after breast cancer. So strap yourself in. Welcome to the Hope After Breast Cancer podcast. Hi, everybody. It's Jan James from Hope After Breast Cancer, and we are at the Sex After Breast Cancer Facebook group. It's a private Facebook group doing Sex After Breast Cancer Live, our live broadcast. It's weekly, and it's to answer questions that our women have inside the Facebook group. And I am delighted to once again, I feel like you're my partner in crime now, Traci. Traci Owen is a sexuality counselor in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and she is as passionate as I am, if not more, about helping our women find solutions to what's hurting their intimate life after breast cancer. After a diagnosis, everything goes to you know where and you know what. And so, but Traci counsels people every day, and she'll tell you a little bit about your background. She counsels people about the solutions that are available. I always thought there weren't solutions. Then I met Traci and some of our other experts, and that is just not true. So Traci, welcome. And can you tell the girls a little bit about yourself?
Well, you know I can.
I know you can.
So, gosh, it's good to be here on our third one. I love that. It's been kind of fun. I think we're figuring out so many things on after each session, right? So I'm Traci Owen. I'm a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 33 years. I'm an oncology nurse of 14 years, and I'm a sexuality counselor and a sex educator. So the birth of that new road for me in healthcare came out of working at a cancer center, walking the journey with so many people, right? So many men and women and their partners, and really seeing a big hole in our healthcare provision that didn't address intimacy and sexuality. But all the evidence tells us that issues of intimacy and sexuality are in the top 3 negatively impacted areas of the cancer patient's life. So the fact that we're not talking about it is pretty heavy. So sister stepped into it, and I feel like I can look back over 40 years total in healthcare almost and know that this has all been leading to this place. So I love what I do. The calling was not mine, it was given to me. And I always just tell people all I did was say yes. So I'm in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. If I can help you, reach out. Intimate Pathways Center for Sexual Health is the name of my business. And I'd love to step in it with you as well. So call me if I can. But I am going to tell you, Jen James and I had some conversations earlier today. Yes. And so knowing about some of the things we wanted to step into tonight, talking about stepping into it, right? Yeah. I was telling Jan, we were talking about some of these things, and there's sticky conversations that we're going to have. Mm-hmm. For me, the sticky conversation is okay because that's the only conversations I have anymore, right? Anything about intimacy, sexuality is loaded. And I think something, Jan, that's so important for every woman in the group to remember is that as they're reading these posts from other women, right? Like how I would present a post might be different from how you would, from how the next person would. Mm-hmm. But that's a flat Stanley look at that situation. And I can't apply what another woman is pouring out of her soul. I want to give her space to pour that out of her because that's her truth. That may not be my truth. That may not be anything about my truth. It doesn't make either one of us wrong. We're just living in our own lives. So I will say tonight may feel sticky. But as I tell Jan, as I just said before we came on, some of the most important conversations we share in our life are the stickiest ones.
Mm-hmm. That is truth. Yeah.
So I want to step in for my own self and say, as Jan and I kind of visit some of these hard topics, I want you to know my heart. I'm not out to get anybody. I don't want to shame anybody. I don't want you to feel bad. I just want you to hear my perspective, and then you get to decide how you apply that into your life.
Right, right. It's
Is
so
that fair?
important. Yeah, I think that's so well said, kiddo, because ladies, you know what? We all come from different backgrounds and all have our own belief systems, and we're different ages, and we are a really, really diverse group of women. I just looked, we're in 79 countries. Think about that even. And
cultural differences, right?
Oh my goodness. And
religious differences.
Absolutely.
Right? And they all really factor into what we bring to the bedroom.
Right. And so one of the things I want to just encourage the women in the group to think about is that when you're posting something, or no, let me say this, when you're replying to someone inside the group, you're replying to 93,000 women with all those different backgrounds. And so you can share, I encourage anyone that has had success or different experiences, that's what you share. My experience has been, I'm going to say to you that, I'm excited. Tomorrow I get my delivery of vaginal estrogen. That is not everybody's thing. But I have, I've been sharing inside the group some of the experiences I've been going through as far as learning about estrogen. And I made that decision for my health situation. I have a prolapsed urethra. I know that the estrogen is going to help with that as well. So there's some different things going on with me than there would be with you. But I'm going to always share it as my experience. It's never, you guys should go get vaginal estrogen. Oh, no, we don't do that here, right? We're sharing our experiences so others can learn from them. So just keep doing that. Keep doing what you're doing and keep encouraging each other. Remember, we're not a debate group. We're a support group. We love that part of it, that we can support one another no matter where we're at in our journey. I've often been asked by our sweet stage 4 girls, Jan, your group the big group is called Hope After Breast Cancer. I don't have hope after breast cancer. I'm stage 4. I'm like, yeah, I wanted to call it Hope After Breast Cancer comes into your life like a bull in a china shop and wrecks everything in its path.com. But I wasn't sure if it was memorable. It was really long. Too long. It was long. So anyway. Okay. So Trace, let's get going. Let's talk UTIs. I'm going to read this post from one of our gals from this week. It says another UTI, and then she wrote a word that I'm going to just, let me demonstrate what I think she meant. Okay, good. Second one in 2 months. Last time it was when we used a new lube. Next time we had sex, I was fine. Used a new lube that you all recommended that I bought. This past weekend, no, we don't have sex as often as most couples, but I'll take what I can get. We had sex again, used no lube. I didn't need it, surprisingly enough. And yesterday I could feel it coming on and tested positive on the home test strips. I have sent a message to my PCP for a prescription for antibiotics and asked what I can do to prevent them in the future, other than the standard going to the bathroom after we finish, wipe front to back, drink lots of water, etc. I have added cranberry capsules to my arsenal of meds that I take, but I don't want to end up with a UTI after we have sex every time. Traci Owen, I'm calling on you.
Okay, so in that little bitty issue, there's like 50 issues, right? So first I would say the first question I would ask her, well, I would ask 1,000 questions, I can't even lie, but specific to this particular situation. First thing I would ask her is if she's doing any routine vaginal hydration. Our urinary system, our external genitalia, the vulva, and the vagina are all very estrogen receptor happy. That's part of their food service. So whether we go through a natural menopause, a chemical menopause, or a surgical menopause, our ovaries are not feeding those tissues like they used to. So we need to feed them, right? So I've talked to a lot of folks. You mentioned vaginal estrogen as an option. But here's the thing, the reality. There are still a whole lot of oncologists, right? This is still very up in the medical air. And medicine doesn't turn, it turns like the Titanic, right?
It does, indeed. Indeed, we know that. Yep.
So if a physician isn't willing to provide it, if the woman isn't comfortable taking it, we have other options. So vaginal estrogen, definite option. Interestingly, women who take oral estrogen don't always get the same vaginal impact of health as they do with vaginal. So if you're taking estrogen for the vagina, then put it in the vagina.
Right.
And we know that has less buck up by the physicians than an oral will, because one's going everywhere. If we put it in our vagina, it pretty much stays in that area. Initially, when a woman first starts, she'll have a little bit of bump in her estrogen level if we checked it by blood, but not enough to take her out of the menopause level.
Right. It kind of, the way I heard it explained that it uses it up in the vagina rather than letting it travel. But if
it's a localized treatment,
right? So if you
versus a systemic,
if you would take it orally, though, it would go through your whole system. So these are two different, very different things. However, I actually love the other options you have that are non-hormonal and no prescription needed. Can you tell us about that? No prescription
needed, so I don't have to hassle with somebody agreeing with me or hearing my story or validating my worries, right? Because I wish I could say that wasn't the case, but then I would lie, and I'm not a great liar. So the non-hormonal options, check out products that contain hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid helps cells in the vagina hold more moisture inside the cell, which makes the cell wall stronger and plumper, right? And we want some plumping in there. That's vitality. It also helps to stimulate the growth of epithelial cells, which is what lines a happy, healthy vagina. So hyaluronic acid is a great impact. And we know that for a lot of those products, we can get to 90 to 93% response to the same 98% response that we get from estrogen. So that's pretty close, right? Like I'll take 93% improvement of my dry vagina. Thank you. My favorite product is Hylaogen, and I'll type that in the chat the next time.
Yeah, I've got it, Traci. I've got it from last
Hylaogen just came out. It's always been a clear gel that you inserted using an applicator, but now they also have a suppository option. So Traci, who has been postmenopausal since she was 36, and she's 20 years down the road now, I too, because I had a surgical menopause, would have vaginal dryness and vaginal atrophy, and sex would be painful for me, and I'd probably get a lot of UTIs, but I've chosen something different, right? I chose to take care of my body so that when I wanted to be sexual, I could be sexual and I would have health. So the woman with the UTIs, the recurrent UTIs, the first thing I ask is, how are you hydrating your vagina? Women who are on hormone blockers, I tell them they're going to need probably some sort of hydration at bedtime 2 to 3 times a week, routinely, right? And that's not on a sex night. We want it to sit in there and do its job. So hydration, first thing.
Traci, can you one more time, there's a question in the chat. Is it safe for estrogen receptor positive breast cancer?
Yes, it is non-hormonal. There is no hormone impact in the hyaluronic acid products.
Right. Okay.
So it is safe for every vagina unless you have an allergy. which is rare. Hyaluronic acid is naturally occurring in our body. So it's not a foreign chemical. We just don't have as much hyaluronic acid as we age.
Right. And I'm actually putting in the chat the 3 brands that you mentioned last week are Hylaogen, Revaree, and Gynatrof, right?
Yes. And I use Gynatrof for a lot. It adds in some vitamin E. So sometimes women just need that extra push of that vitamin E. Some women just like it better. I think the reason we have multiple products is because different products feel better in in our bodies, right? So there's choices.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So vaginal hydration would be the first question for recurrent UTI. The second would be, have you considered taking a probiotic that's designed for females, meaning that it provides gut help, bladder help, and vaginal health? There's a lot of conversation about the microbiome of our body, and our immune system is really driven pretty well from this. So they're Intimate Rose, she's a pelvic floor physical therapist, and she has her business is called Intimate Rose. On her site, she has a great probiotic designed for women for gut, bladder, and how it helps with bladder is not only the probiotics, but it also has D-mannose and cranberry in it. So that is where the bladder kind of additional protection comes from. So that's one option, right? Like a probiotic. And there's lots of probiotics out there, but I like hers for women with recurrent UTIs because it tends to help us break the cycle for women.
Okay.
For women who still are having trouble, I'm going to say, have we seen a urologist to make sure things are okay in that area? A lot of times we just are like, oh, it's another bladder infection, call me in a prescription, but we don't do a culture. If we have more than one urinary tract infection and we have another one right behind it, we need to be culturing that to make sure that that's not something we need to be treating with a different antibiotic than the one you were taking.
Very good. Okay.
So vaginal hydration, consideration of a probiotic, and lubrication, like and I know she said she's tried different lubes. I bet if we improve the health of her vagina and the microbiome, we would probably see a different outcome for her. But if not, but wait, there's more. There is a product called Elura, E-L-L-U-R-A, Elura. Check it out online. I have found that women who get those after sex UTIs that don't go away with hydration and microbiome, this product can be taken right after sex, and it's a high concentrate form of cranberry is what it is. So it's not like a prescriptive product. It's a supplement. But women who take that, I think they take 2 pills right after sex, and that usually will kick that extra thing away.
Okay, that's awesome to know, just in case you are a special case, right? Good.
Yeah, well, there's always a special case.
We are all special in our own
I'm a special case.
That's for sure. Okay, let me go to the next question if that's okay. Okay, this question says, I feel really itchy and numb in my vagina. The vaginal moisturizer helps. I don't know what kind that means, Traci, but something. The last time I had sex was 2 months ago. I'm going to try again, but is there anything else I can do before trying other than lube and using vaginal moisturizer? Well, the first thing I'd want to know is, just like you said, which vaginal moisturizer are you using and how routinely are you using it? I've had people who started using vaginal moisturizers and they thought they just needed to use it before sex, or they, did it once when they thought about it a couple of times a month. It wasn't a routine thing. So that's the first thing I would ask.
I've seen a lot of women in the group talk about Replens, and I'm not a huge Replens lover. I feel like it's just like Chapstick. It basically just goes over the top of the surface. If Replens works great for you, phenomenal. But if you're using Replens and not getting response, I would switch products.
And it's not recommended by a couple of our other experts as well. So Traci's not the only one. Would you mind, by the way, this is a little sidebar, but how do you feel about coconut oil as a lube?
If the woman is not diabetic, not on diabetic medications, doesn't have recurrent yeast infections, then coconut oil is probably fine as a lubricant. But those other situations, we steer away from coconut oil. We can go to different products, and a lot of people love coconut oil. I mean, but that's always kind of the place I ask, is just making sure that we're not having any of those situations. And then, I mean, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be okay for our bodies.
Okay, no problem. So that's great. Okay. Let's see. This is it. We're going into lack of libido. I'm going to again do a sidebar. Traci and I were texting back and forth the other night, preparing for our discussion today. Or
maybe just a random discussion.
It could be, we've been known to do that. And we have a couple hour time zone difference and everything, but we were going at it pretty good. And it was interesting. Like, you guys in the group always are teaching us new things, and there just have been a lot of questions about our partners lately. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I'm curious, and I'll be posting this inside the group, but I think we're probably going to do it whether you say we should or not. But do you think that a series of podcasts and videos for our partners, to help our partners understand what we're going through, would be helpful? I think that I don't know, that's really on my heart that we would do that, and Traci concurred, so, but we'd like to hear back from you. And that is something, ladies, that we'll really want to get your input on. Like, what things specifically do you feel your partner needs to have understanding of? I mean, listen, I'm the same as you. I'm not a professional anything. I'm you. But I have to tell you that my husband has learned so much about sex after breast cancer because he does all of our production, and he's, we're in it big time. I wish all of you had a husband that would learn. He just is learning by osmosis because of that. Right. And so it was a very big, like, why no desire anymore? No. What are you talking about? It's painful.
Well, and it is so important to, in the desire question, to be like, it's not that I don't love, admire, respect, and desire you. It's that I'm struggling to find my own sense of sexual desire. Right. That's a very different opinion.
Very good point.
A very different message, not an opinion, but a very different message.
Yeah. So this question very specifically is, how can I help my husband understand my lack of libido? I've tried to explain, but he says I can control it. And while I am truly the victim, he makes it out like I don't want him or care about him, which isn't true. But I'm tired of being stressed out about sex at this point. I stress enough about a recurrence and all these side effects. It's been months since we were last intimate, and it was a disaster.
Some things, when they go on for a while, Jan, sometimes we need somebody to step in that with us, right? And that's where I feel like that's what I do, right? Like I was saying at the beginning of this, sometimes we have to have really sticky conversations to get to the other side of where we want to be. Like, we have to go through the muck to get to the rainbow. And that's hard, right? Because then that means we both have ownership here.
Right.
Because as I tell couples, when I meet with couples the first time, in this room, there are 3 people. But in this room, I'm serving a 4th, and the 4th is the marriage or the relationship. So I'm not representing either side. I'm representing what will serve the relationship. Because we get into pointing fingers and sides and aggressor, and, you know, we get into some hard places. And so when it's gone on for a while, it's usually hard for couples to kind of find their way through. So reach out to somebody, right? There are people in the world that you can talk to about this that can help you and your husband navigate a very important conversation.
Right.
And that's what that comes down to, is us understanding. And we have to talk about what we mean by sex, because a lot of times men in our society have only been given permission to the physical encounter of sex. So they use sex as their way of clinging in a storm, feeling comforted, feeling valued, feeling seen. I mean, it has, you know, sex is loaded with so many things beyond that 3 little letters. And so helping a couple kind of understand each other and find a new way forward is so great, because we keep trying to go back to the way it was before. And if that way isn't working for us, we may not have the tools we need to go forward. And so that's where a professional could probably help you step into that a little better.
Right. So Traci, you're a sexuality counselor. What other titles are there in the industry that people might look for as far as getting some help that way?
So sex therapist, making sure that they actually, like my certification is through AASECT, 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 American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. I will tell you that applying for that certification is like applying for your master's thesis. It's huge. So, you know, you go to the AASECT website and you can put in your state and it will tell you who is a provider. But do keep in mind, in today's world, a lot of providers can work across state lines. So, you know, as a nurse, I'm licensed to practice in 34 states. So, you know, check out your local area, and if there's not someone local, then branch out and see if they have telehealth services available.
Right. And I just am putting the AASECT referral directory up in the chat, guys. So if you'd like to take a look at that for the podcast audience, that will also be in the description as well. Okay. So that's awesome. Okay. Here we go, Trace. Sticky time.
Better get a drink.
Okay. Right. Oh, and I just
lick up my lips too.
I want to say to you ladies that I have been through so much of this same stuff. I have. And I just have great empathy for what you're going through, and I'm sorry you're going through it. It just breaks my heart. But we are dedicated to giving you answers that you can take to your provider so that you can be very deliberate about healing your sexuality. Okay. And Traci is only one of several of our contributing experts that's focused on.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, no, I think we have 6 or 7 now. So, which is really great. So you're going to be hearing from different voices, and these are practitioners that have different experiences as well and different advice. So, again, just put this, this live broadcast, Thursdays at 6 Pacific on your calendar. And for the podcast audience, you're going to be seeing these in the podcast feed every week. So just so you know, as long as we're doing them. So there we go. Okay. This question is, it goes like this. I just caught my husband using porn to fulfill his needs. He turned it around on me that I'm not attracted to him. I had a breast revision surgery May 1st with hernia repair, and then my dad died June 14th of bladder cancer. He has been so supportive through all of it, and I thought everything was okay. I caught him multiple times in 25 years, told him how it made me feel. I begged him not to do it at my lowest, and he promised he wouldn't. I have no boobs, no ovaries, lost both parents to cancer, and feel like just a lonely shell. I just told him to never touch me again. I don't understand how he can tell me he's fine with my body and then go look at someone else's to pleasure himself. Is there a support group for this? I feel so ugly and a failure, just tired of fighting and keep getting knocked down. Not really a purpose.
Pretty heavy. Like I could feel that, right? I could feel that at the center of me, that grief. So here are the things I wrote down that I want to talk about in that. Fulfill his needs. This is a delicate conversation. And I want to remind everyone that I am not here for shame, judgment, guilt. I'm just talking, right? And you apply how it applies to you. When in a marriage, a committed relationship, when one person is diagnosed with cancer, you're both diagnosed with cancer at the same time. You both are diagnosed at the same time. Sometimes when we're going through hard, big physical battles, we become very inward focused. Rightly so. No guilt there, no shame there. Statement of truth. We turn inward because we're trying to survive. We're trying to find our way through this hard place. And that matters. And I would never say it doesn't matter. So I validate the feeling of her. What I don't know and what we haven't talked about is the feeling of him. Is it fair? Because, so this is an analogy. I told Jan James I got great analogies, or I think they are. You can tell me if they're not. So in my marriage, my husband and I are huggers. We hard hug, we soft hug, we quick hug, we long hug, we side hug, we hug, right? It's important to us. We've enjoyed it. It's a bonding moment for us. Hugging is important in our marriage to connect us. And one day, one of us decides that they no longer want hugs. I don't like hugs anymore. Hugs aren't my thing. I don't want them. But there's two people in that scenario, right? So I go back to the place of the relationship. If hugs have been a really important part of who we have been in our marriage and an important part of connecting us and something that we both have joint value in, is it fair for one of us to just nix it without consideration of my partner may really like those hugs and he may miss those hugs, and those hugs were connecting for him. So even though hugs aren't so much for me anymore, for the love of my love and for the value that I place on our marriage, am I willing to go ahead and hug him every now and then? You know, I come from a place of both people, of the relationship that they create. And we each bring to the relationship and we each take from the relationship. So I wonder what his voice is about fulfilling his needs. Now, an interesting thing has come along in my work in sexuality, human sexuality. I ask men, like, what is porn for you? Because we as women are emotional lovers, right? So we bring a whole lot of meaning into the surrender of sex, a whole lot of our own emotion, our own stuff. we bring into that. Men are wired just a little bit differently than we are. Yes, Greg, I'm measuring a little bit.
They're wired a lot differently, in my opinion.
Yes, but we're wired differently. And here's what men have said to me, because while most of you have not gone out and just asked men randomly what porn means to them, I'm that girl. I never hear an emotional connection to it. So again, I'm a sexuality professional, so I go places a lot of folks don't. But if you ever really want to understand the pornography industry, Pornhub, which is the largest free porn site out there, and they got a little bit of everything. But what they do have is some phenomenal analytics. And you can go on there and see men are on porn sites about 3 to 7 minutes. So that's a pretty efficient show up, take care of some business, and move along, right? So here's what I hear from men. They go there for release. And that's the word they use. They're not seeking connection. They're not there for any emotional thing. They are purely showing up for this physical release of a sexual need. Women, though, attach a lot more to it than that, right? Like, we don't typically just sit around and be like, man, I just, every now and then we do, right? But it's not as prevalent for us. Not that if you're that woman who does, great. I don't have a hang up about porn per se. It's a thing, it exists. I don't have, I think it's how it's applied and what the agreements are in the marriage. So that means we have to have conversations. Unfortunately, our conversations tend to probably come like that writers did, like in the heat of the moment, like, I caught you. And there's no way that conversation is going to go good in that moment, because one of you is coming from a superior, I caught you. The other is coming from a very flash defense, right? So nothing good is ever going to happen in that space. What would be good for that couple would be to plan a date that they can sit down and have a conversation about it, so that the facts, the discussions can be talked about without all of the hot emotion. And I tell couples we need to talk about porn. It's too prevalent in our world not to talk about it. It's too easy to access in our world to not talk about it. But the conversation is sticky, especially if we have differing views. So I would tell them, they probably, since it's gone on, it's been a busted trust for 25 years. I have asked him. He has agreed that he wouldn't do it, but he's busted trust, right? So that's the busted trust piece. I would say to her, honey, find somebody that you can both talk to work through that agreement. So if the agreement can be honored and spoken and everybody understands it, then, we have to make some hard choices in our life. I put a link on the website from Dr. John and Julie Gottman, who have researched sex for decades. There are top renowned folks in sex and intimacy, relationship research. So I put a link to one of their articles about pornography on the website or on the Facebook site. But if it's an ongoing problem, busted trust is at the heart of that. So fulfilling his needs, I don't know what his needs are, right? We don't get to know that in that story. And I wonder, what I hear is his longing. his longing for sex, connection, release, all those things. She says he's been so supportive along the way. So that makes me say, I've had a lot of men tell me they use porn to fulfill their sexual need so that they don't stray outside of the marriage, because inside of the marriage, they're not getting the physical connection. In fact, we have a couple in our immediate close circle that's going through this. The marriage became anemic in connection. It became anemic in love expression. It became anemic in serving each other. And he strayed. And his reason for straying, he wasn't out looking for a hot piece. He was longing. He was longing to be touched. He was longing to be desired. He was longing for a physical connection that felt good. So always two sides on every story, not condoning one or the other. I'm about the relationship. But so supportive along the way makes me like lean into him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to lean into that a little bit because he's been so supportive along the way. What am I missing? He's been there. What am I missing?
Yeah, I think you're right that the open communication, if they can get to that, to just say, just talk about it. And I think I heard you a couple of weeks ago say, this is not one of those conversations you want to have in the bedroom.
Nope.
And it may even be a conversation you want to have outside the house, because if you're in public, you would both not tend to get too heated about the conversation. So
that's at the park.
Right. It just may be, or go have a piece of pie together at Village.
Well, I always think about restaurants. You probably don't want to talk about porn at the restaurant.
Well, I don't know. Well,
I mean,
So,
unless you're in a really quiet corner.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true, huh? Yeah. Okay. And just for the record, folks that are listening on the podcast, Traci's link to an open letter on porn will be in the description as well.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Greg.
No, that's okay.
Two more things on that. I hear her broken trust.
Yes.
I hear that. I hear the pain of that is her broken trust. And he has to own that because he made an agreement with her and he broke the agreement. So that's probably even a bigger thing if you really ferret into the story, the broken trust is going to be the bigger issue there. And then I just heard her in her own grief, her own loss. She is struggling to accept just who she is in that message. And if I'm already questioning who I am and all of the things that means, and I see my partner turning to another woman, but she's not turning to another woman, that's a emotional kind of thing. He's not turning to another woman. He's just there for pleasure. But if you're that wounded and you're that hurting, grieving person, that's going to feel so hard. So this is yet another where I want to encourage these women to find your person that you can talk to about these things, because otherwise we're down the road a long time and now we're more separate from each other. So I would love, just because there's been repeated broken trust, that was the kicker for me.
Right. Now, Traci, I want to just talk about, here we go, sticky again, masturbation and sex toys. Let's just talk about this because, again, we all walk into adulthood with certain imprints from our family of origin. We just are all carrying around some kind of suitcase that's full of whatever we believe about all of these things, right? And those suitcases are pretty heavy. But am I right in saying that I think what I've learned from you is that, like, when the word masturbation comes out of my mouth, Right. Flag on the play. I'm like, oh no. Now, but what I've learned from you is like, okay, I'm going to talk about me now. Here we go. I have severe vaginal atrophy. I've been medically diagnosed with severe vaginal atrophy. I have a lack of blood flow in my vulvovaginal region. Having a vibrator help bring blood flow to that area is therapeutic, right?
Yes,
Hello.
absolutely. It does more than blood flow too, though.
Please share.
So first, I'll just talk about vibrators because they get a bad rap in the world. And sister, as we age, they become powerful tools to enjoy our sexuality and to keep our sexual body in a place of enjoying sexuality. So hydration, number one thing. And I always want women to hydrate for a couple of weeks, but if sex is painful for you, then dilation and vibration is important. If sex isn't painful for you, keeping up vibration will help you not get to a place of pain. So vibration is going to increase blood flow to the genitalia, all of it, right? We want that. That's where we get good oxygenation, good nutrients to the tissues. All the trash gets moved away and the tissues are vitalized. Blood flows good. Same thing if we rub our temples, we get a massage at the masseuse, our partner massages us, we rub our own neck. All of that massage increases blood flow to the area, which is part of what makes it feel better. The tissues are healthier that way. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that our pelvic floor muscles, remember we talked about those a little bit last time, 14 muscles, 5 layers. Those muscles can get a little tense for multiple reasons, not being sexual, having trauma, being a really anxious person. All kinds of things can cause pelvic floors to be dysfunctional. So the pelvic floor, the vibration relaxes muscles around the vulvovaginal area, which helps keep that clench a little bit more relaxed. And then we have genital nerves. So the clitoris, which we've talked about, 8,000 nerve endings end in our 3 to 5 inch long clitoris. We want to stimulate those nerves. Age, loss of estrogen, chemotherapy, hormone suppression will decrease sensation for us. So when our stuff doesn't feel alive, that's because the tissues have become degraded. And we just need to work on getting the tissues back to a place of health so they can do their job.
Awesome.
So that's vibration. Masturbation. I use the word solo pleasure. So I use solo pleasure, partnered pleasure, because masturbation is so heavy.
Yeah, it brings it's in a semi truck.
And as soon as somebody says masturbation, like me as a counselor, if I'm talking to a gentleman and I say, so how often do you masturbate? I can immediately see an entire change and a clenching of his body because he's been so shamed about that.
Right. Okay. That's a great way to do it. Thank you.
So solo partnered pleasure. The Lord made my body. I believe the Lord made my body in perfection. I have cared for the human body for 39 years. There's not one piece of it I don't understand and I don't admire. Probably why the Lord picked me to come have those talks, right? But I can't see my God thinking anything about my body that he made is dirty or shameful. Pleasure is a gift that we have been given. Mm-hmm. And pleasure, when I say the word pleasure, a lot of people go straight to sex. But we feel a lot of pleasure in our life. Mm-hmm. So true confessions, Jan and I tell on ourselves all the time, I can be a little high strung and anxious.
Shocker.
But one of the things that has helped me is some tapping
Mm,
And that's a whole different conversation. You can
sure.
read about it if you're like, what is she talking about? It's
Right,
not dirty, I
right.
promise you. And this is very soothing to me. Like it grounds me back in my body if I'm anxious in my head. Just kind of gently massaging my fingertips up and down my forearm. Everyone do it. What's that feel like?
Weird.
All right.
I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I have to get used to it.
If I have a neck, if I
Oh.
have a headache, I'm going to rub
Yes.
the base of my skull. That's pleasure, right? Oh, that feels good to me.
Yes.
So I ask people who are struggling with pleasure to start identifying all the things that are pleasurable in their life. I love this drink. It's hot. It's 104 here in Oklahoma. And the cool of this and the little citrus taste is pleasurable to me. It makes me feel good. And it's okay for pleasure, and it's okay to feel good. So masturbation, solo pleasure, however that comes out for you, we carry a lot of burden. Women do. Men don't. They go to the same churches we go to.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? There's a question. If the only way you can have an orgasm is through vibration, won't our bodies become so accustomed then we won't be able to have one without the vibration or even stronger vibration as time goes on?
So we can all get trained to one thing, no matter what it is, whether it's porn that gets us off, a vibrator that gets us off. I don't think we should be doing one thing all the time. I think we should have a wide variety of things that we do. My question for that person would be, can you find orgasm without the vibrator? If you can, great, change it up, get all the sensations. But if you can't get an orgasm without a vibrator, okay, use a vibrator, right? As long as you and the partner are in agreement and consenting to what you're doing, okay. Vibrators come in thousands of designs, thousands of sensations. So if you get burnout on one sensation, that's just your body saying, I need a little bit different stimulation than what I used to. And there's no shame in that. That doesn't mean anything's wrong. So have orgasms in all the way you can. Most women, though, 80+% of women will only find an orgasm with direct clitoral stimulation. 8,000 nerve endings. Vagina does not have 8,000 nerve endings, and it's a great thing, or we would have a population crisis on our hand. So the vagina is not the bang for the buck. Porn, Hollywood, they reinforce that piece because that's a very male-driven scenario. Female pleasure comes from the clitoris. We can access the clitoris from the vagina in certain positions in certain women, but not all of them. But clitoral stimulation is the bang for our buck. And men are not taught that. They're only taught the male-centric piece of penile vagina orgasm, right? Freud really did a number on us women because he said you were immature if you couldn't find a vaginal orgasm. You were an immature girl.
Oh my gosh, I'm just having I'm not having a hot flash, but I'm having a moment. I'm just realizing that you would be, when we do our series for partners, we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the fact that most men don't know about the clit and don't understand how that works and all that. So, okay, we're gonna do some education.
You know my velvet, Viv, my velvet.
I do.
Velvet.
Yes, Traci has a very large, maybe foot long. I don't know how to say it. It's a puppet. It looks like a puppet, you guys. But if you're on podcast, she's going to show it in a minute. And it's large, but she puts her hand in it, and it's a vulva. And it's got all the parts, so you can
got all the parts, and that's why it's important because we don't get to learn our parts, right? And then, on this cast today, you know that there are women who have never seen their own genitalia because they have been so shamed and withheld about it.
Right.
And I'm like, if I don't so back to the masturbation, if I don't know my own body, if I don't understand what makes my body feel pleasure, how is somebody who cannot feel a thing that I'm feeling understand how to turn me on?
Right.
So if I want women to understand their bodies and how they work, and we don't. So this is a great tool. In fact, I just used this yesterday, and as I was teaching the woman about her body, she didn't realize that a woman had 3 holes in the genitalia, right? So this, and I don't say that shamingly. I say it shamingly. Shame on us for creating a world that blocked us so heavily from our own selves.
Yeah.
From our own selves.
It's a shame. It really is a shame. Yeah.
So hard.
Yeah. So we're really out of time, but could you just touch on, because I have been more burdened about this one. A lot of women in the group say use it or lose it. Can you just address that?
Well, in a physiological phase, that is kind of true. So I'm going to talk about this from an analogy and self-revelation, right? Because I'm a great storyteller of myself. So this is an analogy. I get that it's awkward, but write it along with me. When I go through menopause, whether it be natural, chemical, or surgical, all the same impact. I was 36 when I was surgically menopausal. Had I not stepped in and had a great partner that helped me problem solve, how do I keep things going now that everything in my body feels different? Had I not learned to hydrate my vagina, use lubricant, embrace a vibrator, be curious about new things, I too would be sitting here at my age in the 50s with a very atrophied vagina. So that's just the physiological truth of menopause, whatever reason it comes to us. And then for those of you who are on additional hormone blockade, right? Like we're talking Sahara Desert here. So that tissue is like, so write it with me. It's crude. I get it. Think of an earthworm. You think of an earthworm, you know, it's a long tube, kind of like our vagina. It's got rings in it when it's well hydrated and it's very bendy and it can maneuver through that dirt as long as it stays moist and out of the sun. You take that same happy, healthy, hydrated, puffy, beautiful earthworm and you put it on the sidewalk in the sun. What happens to it? It shrivels up. It shrinks, it becomes dry, and it becomes inflexible. So if you try to bend that earthworm, once it has dried out, it's not very bendy. It's lost its flexibility, right? Same thing happens to our poor vaginas. So if we hydrate her, we enrich her, then she can do what she was designed to do.
Right.
And the sooner we start, the sad part is that the sooner we start, the less of an issue it is, but we don't talk about it, so we don't do anything about it. And that's, you know, that's the unfortunate. I think that's what Jan and I are on the mission is, even if your healthcare provider isn't telling you this in the oncology center, we want to give that information to you and give you permission to take care of you because it is important. Whether you share sex with another human being or not, taking care of our bodies is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the girls was talking about the fact that she's on chemo and I had asked her to PM you, Traci, but I'm going to throw this out there. You know, she said she doesn't do any vaginal health ritual but she has a strong foul odor coming from her vagina, and she's trying to figure out what to do. So I know that she'll message you, but this is probably any question that we get, ladies, with as many women as we have. There are many others that are wanting to ask the same question. So,
I want to answer this because it's important. So there's a high chance because she's talking about this odor, I'm going to anticipate that she's got a kind of a grayish discharge as well. And because she's on chemo, she's at high risk for bacterial vaginosis. And that requires treatment. So we always will have some level of discharge, right? But we know what our normal is, and an odd smell or an odd discharge tells us something is wrong. Something isn't right. So I would like for her to mention that if she doesn't have a GYN that she can get in with right away, you know, whatever doc she sees next, she needs to mention that so that that can be evaluated. Of course, she'll have to have a pelvic and they'll have to swab it and send it off. But there's a high chance that might be bacterial vaginosis because she's reporting the smell. She didn't mention discharge, I guess, but that would be my first thing that we would want to rule out, because we should not have an odd smell. Now, vaginas are not meant to smell like a meadow brook or a spring rain. You know, all that crap is bad for us.
Right.
So no, it needs to smell like a vagina. And I know in healthcare, women have been freaked out through the years because when we do exams, part of when we're trying to figure things out, we smell, because different problems have different smells and they have different looks. And so we can be like, oh yeah, that's that, you know?
So generically, products that have a scent are not great for us.
They're just extra chemicals. So anything I talk to you about, I'm trying to go as clean as I can in our bodies.
Right. So that's awesome. Okay. Well, you gave us extra time today, my dear. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. You know, I'll talk about it all day long.
I know.
Or I do talk about it all day long. What am I saying?
I know. Here's the two of us. I know. Whoever thought that was going to happen. But thank you to Michael again for sharing you during the evening, which is where you're at in Oklahoma. It's evening time there. But ladies, if you enjoyed this, send a little love to Traci in the comments. And for those of you on the podcast, don't worry. I'm going to have lots of notes in the description for you to go and look at and links. So we are covering all the bases. So watch for the podcast soon on Hope After Breast Cancer podcast. It will also be up as a video on the Hope After Breast Cancer website in the blog, and also in the Sex After Breast Cancer group. So yeah, so we'll see you next week, same time, Thursdays at 6 Pacific in the Sex. What did I say? Oh, Thursdays at 4
Pacific.
4 Pacific, 6 Central, 7 Eastern. You know, I have to tell you that time zones are not one of my gifts. So anyway, yeah.
The only reason I've gotten really good at time zone is because I do some contracting work in Atlanta. And so they're in Eastern, and I work across the US. So I've really had to get good at time zoning where people are. Yeah,
I have a mental block somehow there because I work across the country too, but it just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't resonate with me.
Girl, you got to get your little cheat sheet.
Oh, there you go, girlfriend. I'm with you. There you go.
I got to have cheat sheets. I'm an older girl now.
Yeah, I know. That's all right. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much, guys, for the ones that showed up live. For those of you on replay, the comments, we'll be reviewing the comments, and same thing. We'd like your comments on the blog and on the podcast. So thanks again. And what next week is Q&A number 4. So we'll see
some good stuff.
Yeah.
Jan, we stepped into sticky stuff today. How do you think it felt to you?
I don't feel like I'm in up to my knees. I maybe up to my ankles, but I'm good. I think I can move around. Yeah. High five, girl.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Okay, everybody, putting this up in the group, and we'll see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye. Girlfriend, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. I hope you found some nuggets to encourage you and give you hope. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You never want to miss an episode. and we'd love to know how we're doing, so please be sure to leave us a review. Until next time, this is Jan James encouraging you to remember there is hope after breast cancer. See you next time.